All right, so I'm going to be talking about a series of other forms than the first one that I dealt with. So, part one, I dealt with certain forms. I'm going to deal with other forms on this one. I'm going to start out with an image placement form. So, I'm going to base a lot of what I have to offer on the things that I've gone through over the last almost 40 years of being in this industry. And one of the things I found was when you go into a facility, each person in the facility has their own idea of where things go. And the problem is it may not fall in line with what the customer is expecting. So this is a simple form that gets filled out. There are no specifics on where things have to go, but what we are interested in is making things come together that look correct. And so you need to know, let me see what we have. Oh, I can't even read that. All right, so we have the front of a shirt. So one of the questions on the front of a shirt is, where does a full front go? Okay, so for me, I go 4 fingers below the collar, which is about 3 inches, and that's where I start my full front. Where do you go on the back of a shirt? So some people drop down further, which is a mistake. What you do on the front is exactly what you do on the back, because if you look at the way a garment is constructed, the back is higher than the front. If you go 4 fingers down on the back, you're now hitting across the shoulder blades where you should be, not across the lower part of the back. Other situations are, where does the left chest go? So there's always an issue with the left chest. So one of the things we did years ago was we took the underside of the armhole, came across, came in about 2 inches, and that was our left chest area. Okay, so some of the problems with that. If you come to my booth and look at some of the shirts I have, they have armholes that are down here. The other area was the side of the collar. You came down, and it hit that area. So I also have some boat neck shirts in my booth right now. So if that were the case, my left chest would be out here, okay? So what I do is I go from my 4 fingers down on a full front, I go another 4 fingers down, 2 inches in, and then I give myself a 4-inch area for my left chest, which I then center in that 4 inches and go above and go up from there. And again, it's not a definite area because depending on the size of the image, and I allow for up to a 4-inch image. I think anything beyond 4 inches wide for a left chest is really out of tune. So if I were doing, for example, a Nike swoosh, it wouldn't really sit here. I'd actually pull it up. So there is a little bit of softness in terms of where a left chest goes. But I think what's important is you need to establish what you do in your shop so that your salespeople can convey that to your customer so that what they're expecting is what you're giving them as opposed to the fantasies. All right, so then we get to some other areas. Left sleeve. Do I take it from the bottom of the sleeve up or do I take it from the shoulder down in terms of positioning? What about shorts? Do I use the front of the shorts? Do I use the side of the shorts? Sweatpants. Do we take it from the hip down or do we take it from the bottom up? All right, I'm a fan of from the bottom up. So if you have a basketball team and you have guys who are 6 foot and 7 footers, when they're wearing their sweats, they all have the image in the same spot. Those to me are important things to establish so that your salespeople or your customer knows what they're getting. Instead of expecting a print down the front, they're getting a print down the side. All right. We go to another one. All right. So, aside from where it goes, is how big should it be? And obviously, the easiest answer is you cannot be bigger than your pallet size. But you should have recommended sizes. And sometimes, especially with newer companies, they have an issue with that because you'll hire a graphic designer who has come out of college and they're used to paper. Well, paper is, an A4, but an 8.5 by 11. They think that 8.5 by 11 is big. 8.5 by 11 is tiny, okay? If you're going to do T-shirts and you're going to do a full front, it should be as big as your pallet will allow you to be. So if you have 16-inch pallets, you can go 15 and a half, 15 inches, not 11 inches, okay? And the same thing on length. If you look at my old rock and roll shirts, and I'll try and show some of those when I do black shirts, they were monstrous to the point where on the photos you couldn't see either side. And the question is, why not? And the answer is because if someone wants a full front, they want to be seen. They want to be seen from a distance. So this is not full front. This is full front, okay? And then the same thing for all the other things that you do. The size of a left chest, the size of a hat print, although, God forbid, don't do hat prints anymore. That's why they make embroidery equipment. On shorts, a dictated size. On sleeve prints, basically you're going to work within the palette range that you have. And so establish what that is in terms of size and what you use as your standard so that your customer is expecting something this big on a leg and you're only going this big on a leg, okay? Without that, you find yourself compromising. And anytime a screen printer compromises or any embellisher compromises, it comes down to how much money are you going to lose, because you're certainly not going to make money when you have to compromise anything. Most people now have software that definitely encompasses a lot of this. And I kind of dug this out because about a week ago, someone asked me what a good production board should be like. So what I would do with this is put this on a magnetic sheeting, and I would use colored magnets to move things around. So you have everything from whether the shirts were ordered or not, whether they came in or not, whether the artwork was done or not, whether the screens are done or not. Is it really ready for production? Is it ready to go out the door? What's the due date? The due date meaning what's the date that the customer needs to get it, not the date that you want it out the door. And I think this is this is quite old, but it's still very pertinent today. And I think that's one of the things that I find, and let me reemphasize, I hate paperwork. But what I hate more is not making money. And so you need to have things in place, and certainly putting this into a software program today would be no issue. And is it really a necessity? It's a necessity for everyone to know what's going on and whether everything is in place or not. There's no reason to schedule it for print if you don't have all the parts put together. And so to me, this one works out quite well, okay? Whether I do it on a magnetic board or not anymore, I would not. I would probably do this all within a computer. Again, this was written probably 15 years ago. Computers, no. So magnetic boards were definitely a much easier way to go. Coming out of I have an art background. Well, I was a painter anyway. And I did work in as a commercial designer for magazines, but more importantly, I worked for them for a television station, for ABC Network in New York. And the thing that I found when I opened up my screen print shop, I didn't really run my art department. I ended up hiring an art director because I was more involved with the production area. But at the same time, we'd have customers come in and we would have to quote them on artwork. And in quoting them, I'd go to the particular artist, and I happen to have 6 artists at the time, and say, okay, here's the image. How long is it going to take for you to do the separations, to do the finish, etc.? And I'd always get answers, oh, I could do that in a half hour. Great. Well, when I worked for ABC Network, in order to get paid, we had to be on the clock for a job. And so we needed to be able to punch in and punch out of a job. And that's what this form allows for, is for you to go in and out of a series of jobs, but also to estimate out how much time it would take. And then we can also figure out how much actual time was taken. So I always loved when my artists would say, oh, we could do this in a half hour, and an hour and a half later they were done, which meant I got to eat an hour, okay? Because I could kind of cushion it a bit with my customers. Instead of a half hour, it took 45 minutes, not a problem. Couldn't come back with an hour and a half. And so this is a way of understanding how long things take based on the specific artist that's doing them and based on the specific work. And you do want them to estimate out your time so that you can fill their calendar, so to speak, with work, but more importantly, so that you can invoice appropriately for the artwork done. Now, my company was very different than most back in the 70s, which is when I kind of put some of this together. My biggest account was actually in London, and we had to deal with them very simply. We did the designing and separating. We charged $1,000 per design. And if it didn't print, they didn't pay. And I think we went through about 60 designs, of which one didn't work. There's a group called the B-52s. I can still remember what the image looks like now. Today, you're not going to get $1,000 for what you do. Okay, we were very, very fortunate to be able to do things that others didn't know how. With computers being around today, you can't. And that's why you have to get far more detailed in what you are billing for, because they're going to really push on it. And you need to know how fast your artists are and what they can produce. And this is part of that whole thing. Artists in general have a fantasy about how fast they are. They're not. I do have more. I don't have many more charts. We have a couple of other things. So one of them is a transfer of. How many of you have a transfer of ownership of artwork? Really? Dummies. That's not smart. Okay, so you come to me and say, I want you to design a logo for me to put on my shirt. Okay? So I design it for you and you like it. And you pay me. Okay? Whatever you say, it's 2 hours of work, I'm going to bill you for 2 hours. And you love it and you say, you know what? I want to put that on the side of my truck and I want to put that over my factory. Are you allowed to do that? And the answer is no. Okay, so why not? Because I own the artwork, not you. I designed it and I charged you so that I could do your garments. You don't have any right to do anything else with it. You can't take it to anyone else. You can't do anything else with it unless you get my permission or you buy that from me, okay? So whoever creates original artwork is the owner of it. So if I hire a freelancer to do your job, the freelancer owns it and I need to get a transfer of ownership, okay? Why? I'm the creator. Okay, what I did for a living back in the 70s before I got into screen printing was I did logo designs, and I would do 3 thumbnail sketches, and then I would do a finish based on the composite, and I used to charge $500 for that back in the 70s. Now, I'm sure none of you get to charge $500 for your artwork today. You're doing it not for the logo, but in order to be able to do the printing. That being the case, you don't want that artwork to walk out the door and not be yours. Now, if your customer comes to you with a pretty finished up piece that needs some cleaning up, they own that. You're just doing the cleanup work, you're paying for that. My wife used to work for an ad agency, and I remember getting a call from the art director there to do a 2-page magazine spread for Mexicana Airlines. And I loved working with agencies because they would pretty much do 95% of what you needed. And then they would want to bill that customer at 18.9%, so that was pretty cool. They never argued about price. Anyway, they said, I want a sombrero with the little balls hanging. Here's the type that goes on it. And they paid me. And a couple months later, I got another check, which I loved, but my wife worked for the agency. I'm a fairly ethical guy, so I called them up and said, hey, you already paid me for the job. They said, no, we paid you for a 2-page magazine spread. We've now put it on the billboard, and that's why we're paying you again. And so, of course, my reaction was, can you think of other things that you'd like to use it for? Because I really like getting these checks. When you contract with anyone, when you go to do their artwork, you are doing it for a specific purpose for you to make your money on it, not for them to go wild with it. If they love it and they want to do other things with it, you need to give them a transfer of ownership. And you need to charge for it, or you can elect to not. And that's why way back, everybody would come in and say, I want my film back. And it's like, You didn't pay for the film, number one, and you didn't pay for the creativity on it. Yeah, but I want it. So here's the thing about that. That's a customer you've already lost. So are you going to really piss them off by saying no? Who cares? You've already lost them anyway. Get out of here, okay? There are some things that you have to just deal with, and you don't have to be nasty about it. You can just explain to them that you own the artwork, okay? We'll get to another, I don't know if I have another form. Quick question. How many of you have, well, I know you guys are digital, right? Both, okay. So how many of you have on your order form screen charges? Do you charge for a screen? Is it a screen charge or is it a screen usage charge? No, not setup. Oh, you include it all. Okay. So I finished a job for someone. It was a 3-color job. And at the end, they said, we want our screens. You have a screen charge on here. We want the screens. We said, no, you don't understand. Those screens are ours. The charge is just for using them. So no, it's a screen charge. I want my screen. So he took us to court. The thing about referees, when you go to small claims court, they take it at face value. And it says screen charges, give them the screens. So we went back to the place. We found the crappiest screens we could find. We shot the job. Like the guy said, I can't use these. And my answer was, that's not my problem. You want the screens? Here they are. You need to specify very clearly certain things. Screen usage charge. And you need to have terms and conditions on the back of your forms, or you need to send out a form to your clients that specifies who owns the artwork, who owns the screens, what the charges are for, a setup charge. What exactly is that? It doesn't matter. I understand. But you need to be clear in terms of what that charge is about so that when they ask, it's there. And the other thing, if you were here for the first part on forms, anything you can bill for, you need to have a line for it, okay? If you never use half of them, I don't care. But if you don't have it on there, and let's say a charge for folding and bagging. Oh, we don't have that on there, so I'm going to write in folding and bagging. You know what's going to happen? They're going to come to me and say, I'll bet you don't charge anybody else for folding and bagging, because if you did, it would have been on your form. And the answer is, no, I do. I charge everyone. No, I don't believe it. Anything that you can possibly charge for, you put on there. You can always be very nice and say, you're such a great account. NC, no charge for you. Great. Now you know what happens? They feel wonderful. All right, I'm almost done. Do we have any others? We do. All right, so this is a rundown on the squeegees that I like and what I use them for. When I go into black shirts, I'm going to show some examples of the difference between squeegee hardnesses on the same print. But right now, that's just a simple piece on what I use and what I use it for. So whether it's an automatic or a manual, for the most part, it's kind of specified in there. I'm a fan of hard squeegees for high detail work. But to be honest with you, I never use hard squeegees anymore. I find that they're too limited. So I'm really more of a fan of very soft ones going to medium. And I find that by doing that, I can control what I'm doing on press a lot easier than with something that's very hard and detailed. So that's my rundown on that. Questions? I get a half hour, right? Good, you got 3 minutes to ask whatever you want. Really? You don't want anything? I'm out of here then. The other seminars that I'm doing one on multicolor printing on darks or on black shirts. I'm also doing a 4-color process one and another one on screen making. Hope to see all your smiling faces there.